समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
There is simply no end to the proclamations made by Donald Trump day after day, night after night. And this time it's a double whammy. He's linked the tariff war on India, we see it as a war, he's linked his tariff scheme to his self-proclaimed role as peacemaker. He's gone so far in his latest statement to suggest that it's because of his tariff policy that he's been able to end 4 global wars. This is Foreign Minister Jaishankar has made an intriguing remark about how America will get a run for its money from China. And Pakistan is claiming that Chinese weapons worked, quote unquote, exceptionally well in Operation Sindoor. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo Story. The geopolitical churning never seems to end. Donald Trump, who is now seemingly obsessed with his role, a role given to him by himself as global peacemaker, has done it again. In his latest proclamation, he has claimed that it is because of his tariff war on much of the world that he's been able to play an effective role of peacemaker. Once again, he has specifically mentioned India and Pakistan, and this time he has pretty much directly said that if it weren't for tariffs, Operation Sindoor wouldn't have ended or paused. India has of course rubbished and dismissed Trump's claims, but Trump seems to not give up on this line of thinking and line of claiming credit at all. He's drawing a direct link between his tariff policy and his ability to make global interventions across the world on geopolitics. In the meantime, Foreign Minister Jaishankar has made 2 important comments. One, that he doesn't see any country in the world right now in which India could possibly place its interests, and therefore reiterating the need for strategic autonomy. But the second, more intriguing statement is about how he sees China as being the country from whom America will get a run for its money. To understand all that is happening at a time when actually India-Pakistan tensions are soaring again, the defense minister issued a fierce statement, as did the army chief. This after Pakistan's military infrastructure build-up reported near Sir Creek. Let me introduce our guests on the program today. India-US relations just don't seem to get any better, and despite Trump's claim of having been a peacemaker, India-Pakistan are actually in a phase of active tension once again. Joining me now is military veteran General Shukla, Raj Shukla. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Suhasini Haidar is with us. She's one of India's foremost journalists. She's also the diplomatic editor at The Hindu. Good to see you, Suhasini, as always. And veteran diplomat Ambassador Ashok Sajnar is with us. Welcome to the program, sir. I want to start by playing out Trump's latest salvo and see if we can make sense of it. Take a look.
Nobody's actually seen anything like it.
Would you shift your position on tariffs in response to whatever you
Well,
said?
I mean, look, my positions turned out to, everybody said I'm right. They find billions of dollars that they didn't even know they had. Recently, they said they found billions of dollars and they couldn't understand. I said, check the tariff shelf. And they come in the next hour and they said, sir, you're right. It was from the tariffs. We're a really rich country again. But more importantly, maybe influence. If I didn't have the power of tariffs, you would have at least 4 of the 7 wars raging. I use tariffs to stop wars. If you look at India and Pakistan, they were ready to go at it. 7 planes we shot down. They were ready to go at it. And they're nuclear powers. And I don't want to say exactly what I said, but what I said was very effective. They stopped. And that was based on tariffs. It was based on trade. Tariffs are very important for the United States. We are a peacekeeper because of tariffs. Not only do we make, hundreds of billions of dollars, but we're a peacekeeper because of tariffs.
So, Ambassador Sajnar, I'll start with you. Trump has, of course, bet the farm, as they say, on his Gaza peace plan, and we have to see what happens on that. Will he actually bring a sort of diplomatic victory home that is acceptable to all sides, that is also seen as just and fair? That's a big question mark. But from our perspective, apart from the fact that he's like a stuck record, he keeps making this sort of brazen claim that if it weren't for these tariffs, he wouldn't have the influence that he's managed to exert, including on our part of the neighborhood. Have India-US relations now reached a point of, of such a big and deep stalemate that nothing in the immediate seems to be improving them?
Yes, thank you very much, Barkha, for having me. Yes, you're right. I think let's not put the whole relationship in this bucket. I think it's the tariff issue that has really been plaguing the bilateral ties. There have been sort of other elements of the relations which have been progressing quite smoothly, going on quite well. And I think you in your programs have also mentioned about that, whether it was the exercises, Yuddha Abhyas in Alaska, the visit of the Defense Policy Group, visits of other delegations that have been taking place here, etc. So I think there has been on the the intersessional dialogue on 2+2. So there have been discussions on other aspects, and some of them have gone pretty active. There's been also a meeting on the sidelines of the UNGA between Dr. Jaishankar and Marco Rubio, and that was a good meeting. So I think tariffs is one issue on which there are problems, and you're very right. I think what Mr. Trump seems to be repeating ad nauseum is like a broken record. It keeps going on and on. I hate to use such expressions and such words about a president, head of a government, but this is what it has really come to. And if there was an iota of truth in this, he would not really have had to repeat it 50 times. He's had to repeat it 50 times because people don't trust him, people don't believe him. And it is so irrational and so illogical what he says, that I talked about the tariffs. Now we know that during Operation Sindoor, 7th to 10th of May, there was not a single conversation between Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Trump. The only conversation that possibly took place was just after Pahalgam. There was nothing else that happened, and he keeps on repeating, and he's talking about billions of dollars having come into the coffers of the United States. This is such a hyperbole. It is such an exaggeration. But that is not something that we need to be bothered about. We have made our point of view very clear. But yes, the impact it is having on Pakistan in terms of its flexing its muscles, in terms of getting, it feels that it has the support from the United States and possibly even China, and after the pact with Saudi Arabia. So it feels, much more in a position to push back against India. So I think it is India needs to be careful about all these developments that are taking place.
There is something for sure going on that front, whether it's Pakistan feeling emboldened or the Sir Creek concerns that India has called out. But in terms of, you can't do very much but ignore Trump's hyperbole. Before I come to General Shukla from what's going on the national security front, so Hasni, you look at every detail of really this story and affiliated issues. How do you see it? Do do you believe that India has now reached a point where it's just kind of given up on Trump's rhetoric? It's even ceased to call it out, because how many times can you counter the same thing? The fact is, if there was a trade deal, we wouldn't be slapped with 50% tariffs. So clearly Trump contradicts himself. But he seems to suggest that, and he said it very clearly, if I didn't have the tariffs, he links the tariffs or the threat of tariffs to influence. And I don't know how we should read that.
Well, I think he may be confusing tariffs and trade as one aspect, but certainly this is not the first time he has said it. And remember, even in a US court, where the Trump administration's tariff rules were being challenged, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick gave an affidavit, I think, as early as May 28th, to say we use trade as a leverage to stop the India-Pakistan war. So there are more details that Mr. Trump is giving now. He now talks about 7 planes being shot out of the sky. He talks about the fact that he himself spoke, which, as Ambassador Sajjanar says, Mr. Jaishankar is on record in Parliament saying there was no conversation. So he's countering that. So there are a number of things he's saying now, which perhaps have not been focused on in the past, but it is a repeat. And as you said, maybe the Indian government feels it does not need to repeat them. However, I think at the same time, there are 2 problems. One is that there is still no clarity on what happened in Operation Sindoor. As journalists, I can tell you, whenever we've asked questions from the military, we are told very clearly Operation Sindoor is still on. So these details cannot be shared. However, we see a military chief practically every day from one or the other part of the military putting out a press statement or speaking in public or giving a press conference and giving details of what happened, at least on the Pakistani side, during Operation Sindoor. So there's a little bit of a confusion over, whether it is now time to speak about what happened in Operation Sindoor very openly, or whether we have to wait until the actual operations, whenever are declared, completed. So that's one bit where there's a little bit of confusion. The other bit of confusion is that, yes, the Ministry of External Affairs has put out statements denying what Mr. Trump has said. On one occasion, the Foreign Secretary has given a statement saying that Prime Minister Modi told Mr. Trump that what he was saying was absolutely untrue. This was when they had that telephone call in June. And yet Mr. Trump has said it more than 40 times. We don't hear the unequivocal way that Mr. Trump is speaking. We don't hear Prime Minister Modi responding to it at all. I think in any democratic country, if it's gotten to the point where one side's leader is speaking, then why isn't Prime Minister Modi turning around and saying, I don't agree, Mr. Trump is not telling the truth? And he's referring to a conversation on August 27th. Trump said very clearly that he spoke to Prime Minister Modi on May the 10th. And he
there
says,
was the parliament, sorry to interject, there was the parliament account where Mr. Modi, Prime Minister Modi spoke about J.D. Vance trying to reach him, not being able to reach him, then him calling him back. And he does document that. There is an official readout of the 17th June call that took place between Modi and Trump. My question to you as a follow-up only is this. Considering the frequency with which Trump says this, what is the appropriate frequency with which somebody in government politically, whether you consider it foreign minister or the prime minister, should counter this, if at all?
Well, I think the prime minister needs to counter it more strenuously. After all, he had a conversation with Mr. Trump on his birthday. Why didn't this come up in that call or in the readouts of the call? He's also tweeted his praise of Mr. Trump's Gaza deal in 7 different languages in the last few weeks. Why doesn't the Prime Minister say very clearly, I disagree with this, and Mr. Trump is doing himself and us and the relationship no favors? The real problem is that Mr. Trump is using bullying tactics, and we're not really pushing back. We're just sort of side-swiping or allowing other levels of bureaucrats to deal with it. But at the end of the day, only one account, we've gotten to the point where only one account can be true. Our version or their version. And I think we have to be very clear about that.
So, General Shukla, let me bring you in on a couple of different points. I'm sure Ambassador Sajjanar will respond on the sort of diplomatic dimension, though you can too. I think Suhasini raises the point of, one, how should the world or India handle Trump? He keeps saying this. Do you counter him each time? Do you counter him in private? Do you counter him once and then leave it there? Or do you sort of qualify any praise with also a reminder that, but these are our red lines, you crossed them, or you said things that weren't true? Also, if that is to be said, who should be saying it? Because, Trump is his own kind of politician, and not every politician around the world is like that. That's question 1. Question 2, from a security lens, there is now talk of an Op Sindoor 2.0 or sort of removing the pause button on Operation 1.0. There are questions you yourself have raised about strategic communication, how it needed to be better, how it can be better. There is Pakistan, possibly for a brief moment taking succor in the fact that it has a pact with Saudi Arabia, it has weaponry and the blessings of China, and it has a friendly Trump. So I want you to come in on all of these points.
On many of the aspects that you brought out about Mr. Trump, he's on a delusional path. So let me tell you, when he looks at this piggy bank of his tariffs, I've heard a different set of figures from Mr. Lutnick. He's argued that the tariff reset has brought in some $1.5 trillion. I've also heard him say that that gold card, bronze card has brought in another $1 trillion. Now, if this is the kind of stuff that's happening, then what were the previous administrations doing? I mean, then Trump is really a magician if all this is really happening. But the other parts, some of these things are delusional. What India should do is to separate truth from fiction. So let me, point out one aspect. Apart from Munir, I'm told the Pakistani air chief also traveled to Washington. And he gave some confidential briefings of how Pakistani air power was great, how they integrated AI software and all that stuff. So if they were all that great, I want to ask, how many aircraft have the Pakistanis lost on Pakistani account? Tell me. Did you lose nothing? How many did you lose? Why does nobody ask these questions? Why don't we ask the Pakistani air chief that if your software integration was all that brilliant, on 10th of May, why were your J-10s, J-17s scurrying for cover backwards? Why were they not moving forward? The ultimate function of air power is to gain control of the skies. On the 10th of May, who had control of the skies? Did Pakistan have control of their own skies? These are the questions. And I have no problem with Mr. Trump. I don't expect him to ask these questions. The questions that Pentagon and the Trump administration is posing to the air chief are worrying. I respected the Pentagon and the American military for being professional, but they are being delusional. Of course, there were reverses we had on the first night, but let's go by outcomes. And I've heard very few voices asking the Pakistani air chief, how many aircraft did you lose? So that would be an accurate account. What Mr. Trump should also worry about when Mr. Jaishankar says, giving the Chinese giving a run for the money. Is it not a fact? The Americans are stuck in a shutdown. And I remember, I think it was in 2010, Barkha, that Robert Spalding brought out this book, Stealth Wars, where he said that the Americans were asleep at the wheels. I think last week, Rush Doshi has come up with a brilliant net assessment of the Chinese American power equation, and the figures are mind-boggling in China's favor. Manufacturing twice, power generation twice, cement 20 times, rare earth 90 times, something else 97 times.
What does that mean for us? What does that mean for us?
What that means is that the Chinese are actually giving an Americans a run for their money. So a wise American president should worry about this and not whether Munir is recommending him for a Nobel Prize and all. And why I say this, because you brought up this question about Trump. I recall in the heyday of Saddam Hussein, there was some kind of video showing Saddam Hussein visiting a museum with 50 paintings of murals of Saddam Hussein himself. And he would pause at one painting and somebody would explain one part of his greatness. He would pause at the other, then somebody would explain. I mean, that kind of nonsense is now being churned out from White House. A flattery tax. Therefore, what should India?
Yeah.
India should separate, the delusions from facts. And there, I'm the first one to admit that we have a problem on our hands. Western horizons, Eastern horizons. The statements of the Raksha Mantri and the army chief tell you that, yes, terror is not over. They tell you that the build-up along Sir Creek is... So India is honest. India is introspectional. We know we have weight and influence that has not yet converted into power. We should be cautious about all that. But I just have one last point to make, that every day to get influenced by what Trump says and what Munir says is a kind of low IQ response to the challenges before the world. There are far graver things to worry about.
So in short, you don't believe that at the prime ministerial level a counter is necessary, as Suhasini suggests that there should have been a more strenuous.
No, Suhasini has her view, but
Sure.
the Prime Minister and the Indian government have denied it on occasion without end. कि भाई बात नहीं हुई, JD Vance से क्या बात हुई. There is, and what is my conclusion? My conclusion is that of course the Americans are influential. They would have exerted some kind of pressure or influence. But to say that the ceasefire was because of Mr. Trump's intervention, I'm not prepared to believe it.
Okay, since we brought up Jaishankar's rather interesting comment on China giving America a run for its money, before I come back to all three of you, let's listen to Foreign Minister Jaishankar, and I'll come right back to Ambassador Sajnar after that.
And to the, where the US stands vis-a-vis China. Again, it's very hard to give a sweeping answer. But the fact is that in many areas, clearly the US is going to get a run for its money, which would not have been the case a few decades ago. And these are, I would say, instructive for a country like India. Which is, how do you build those deeper strengths? How do you create a workforce, the startup culture, the entrepreneurship, the institutions, really to look at imbibing, absorbing, and creating technology.
So, Ambassador Sajnar, what did you make of that comment that China will give America a run for its money? And also, to Suhasini's point, that there needs to be a more strenuous rebuttal of Trump at higher political levels. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you say?
Okay, a couple of points here, Barkha. As far as what Dr. Jaishankar has said, I don't think he's sharing any secret. This has been known to us for quite some time. If today China is, responsible for 38% of the global manufacturing, the United States is responsible only for 13%. You look at what are the patents that are coming to China, what are the patents that are coming to the United States. You look at the military power, you look at the naval power, you look at technology, you look at DeepSeek, you look at ChatGPT, etc. I think in every field, China has been making a lot of progress. So, what I would say is that External Affairs Minister did not share any secret. It was a statement of fact. And I think the second sentence after that, Barkha, he has also explained, because I'm sure that's going to be your next question. He's explained what India needs to do. And he has said that we have to look onwards, inwards, and we have to, and he's been talking about it, that there's weaponization of everything. There's weaponization of markets, there's weaponization of finance, there's weaponization of supply chains, etc. So we have to have multifarious, multi-aligned relationships with a large number of countries. And in that context, whether it is the India-UK FTA, India-EU FTA, so, that's the way to go. But coming to the questions that we have been discussing, I frankly don't feel that there is any need for a more robust, more direct, more obvious response. I think we have given responses at the level of the official spokesperson. That should have been enough. If that was not enough, Dr. Jaishankar has also said this, and even the Prime Minister has said that when Mr. Vance told him, whatever time at night it was, that Pakistan has threatened that they are going to come with a huge attack on India, what was the Prime Minister's response? Let them come, we will deal with it. And we dealt with it. We dealt with it very effectively. So I don't think, and after the conversation on the 17th of
June
between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, I don't think there is any need whatsoever. I think we should be, we are not into a slugfest with another country. United States is an important partner for us. And this is one particular aspect, one particular issue. Now, let me also, I think each one of us here and all your viewers and listeners know Mr. Trump is very unpredictable. You remember the time, Barkha, and I'm sure my co-panelists also would not have forgotten, 2019, when Imran Khan is in the White House, in Oval Office. And because now Mr. Trump needs Pakistan to reach out to the Taliban, notwithstanding his tweet on the 1st of January 2018, that we have given $33 billion.
Yeah.
and all that we have got is safe haven for them. And at that meeting in 2019 with Imran Khan, he tells him, I'll mediate on Kashmir. And that Mr. Modi has told me to mediate on Kashmir on this issue. Mr. Trump is a loose cannon. If I'm going to sort of, take him on publicly at the level of the Prime Minister, then there are no channels of communication whatsoever open. I think what we have done, and I think the whole world knows whom to believe and whom not to believe. So I don't think we are going to get anything further on that. The last point, if you permit, what I'll make, what you had discussed in the opening remarks. Trump has said, or his administration has said, that this is an instrument of our foreign policy. Tariffs are an instrument of our foreign policy. They are necessary for our national security. That is the argument that has been made by the United States in the Supreme Court. This is the argument that has been given. So he is just amplifying on that this is something that I need to use because this has been challenged in the courts. So we'll really have to wait and see how
So before I come to Suhasini, I just want to read a comment from one of our very regular viewers. Saurabh Vishish says, the United States is deliberately twisting the knife on Pakistan vis-a-vis India to gain leverage in the trade talks. He would probably pull out a Kashmir jumper if asked to find Kashmir on a map. Now, this is not untrue because he keeps talking about Kashmir being some 1,000-year war or whatever. So he is rather weak on facts. But Suhasini, I think both General Shukla and Ambassador Sajjan are sort of arguing that the man is so unhinged that you can't keep countering him. Also, I think it's been deeply reported now that the 17th June phone call between Trump and Modi did not go well. In fact, things soured even more after that call. The readout suggested that India's position on mediation was reiterated. What is it that you are looking towards the Prime Minister or the Foreign Minister or the government of India to say that you believe they're not sick?
Well, I fear speaking because I've now heard from General Shukla that it's low IQ to discuss what the US president says. And Ambassador...
No, he's saying something to you. General Shukla?
He's talking about the general conversation. Sorry, I didn't mean you at all. Please.
Why are we even discussing it? Why are we discussing what the US
I didn't mean you at all. I was talking about the general conversation.
The point being very simply, Barkha, that either we take Mr. Trump, the president and the elected president of the United States, seriously, or we don't take him seriously. If we are going to take him seriously, I don't think this ends here. I think there's been a sense in India that Mr. Trump is talking out of his hat about what happened during Operation Sindoor, and eventually he will pipe down. The truth is, this is part of Mr. Trump's larger strategy. I don't know if you're following it, but there's a huge debate in ASEAN countries right now because Mr. Trump is supposed to go to Malaysia.
And he's asked to be at the photo op between... You tell the story. Yeah.
Thailand and Cambodia. He also apparently wants for ASEAN to officially endorse him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, the truth is that we can either take this seriously or not, but there's no question that this is part of a larger strategy for Mr. Trump. Until he gets what he's aiming for, possibly he will not stop. Now, India has to decide how they deal with a leader, which my co-panelists have described as essentially, in loose terms, slightly off the beaten path, and perhaps not always making sense. But at the end of the day, this is the US president. This is the US president who's put 50% tariffs on India, and Indian exporters are already feeling the pain. There are exporters around the country who have had to lay off people, who are making losses, who are dealing with the pain of what Mr. Trump is doing. This is the president who's effectively axing India's plans for connectivity that bypass Pakistan through Chabahar by taking off the waiver there. This is a president of the United States who is attacking not just H-1B seekers or Indian professionals. He is attacking Indian high-tech companies that use these H-1Bs, and he's attacking India's services, which arguably are India's greatest asset. This is a US president who, by his actions in the last 6 months, has attacked India in several different ways. What my learned co-panelists seem to be indicating is, let's forget about that, because we can talk to America about Indo-Pacific policy or defense agreements and, put everything into different baskets and really paper over the idea that Mr. Trump is
Can I
doing
briefly ask you something before? I know Ambassador Sajna's hand went up and it's also General Shukla's turn to respond. But just briefly, is it possible to take the consequences of Trump very seriously, but maybe think that Trump's rhetoric cannot be literalized because nobody can talk in that coarse, blunt, inelegant, sort of bull in a china shop way? I think both things can be simultaneously true.
I think they could be really true if the government decides that they can speak about what happened during Operation Sindoor. As I said, as journalists today, Barkha, you know this as well, we are not allowed to speak about what happened in Operation Sindoor simply because the operation is not over. The fact is that if the government decides, yes, we will tell you exactly what happened. We'll tell you the conversations, put it out in a paper, and there will be a response. You don't want to respond to that? That's fine. You don't want to respond to Mr. Trump's coarse rhetoric, as you call it? That's fine too. Nobody's asking anyone to do it. I'm just saying that the idea that we take this as one non-serious bad dream that will somehow pass is slightly unrealistic.
Okay, it is General Shukla's turn, but Ambassador Sajna, a brief interjection from you, sir. I saw your hand go up.
A very brief interjection. I think, as it has been mentioned about Mr. Trump, that we need to take him seriously, but not literally. So whatever he's sort of, chest thumping and all that, he's done that, all the sort of things, we need to take it in the manner in which it has been done. The second point that I want to make, Barkha, is, as Suhasini is suggesting, that we challenge Mr. Trump. Okay, we tell him, point blank at the level of the Prime Minister that, what you're saying is wrong. Does she think that the 50% tariffs on me are going to come down, or will they be made to 100? Does she think that H-1B visas that have been made so expensive, that they are going to be made any better for my people? Does she think that Chabahar waiver that has been taken away, that will be given back? I think you are landing yourself in much deeper troubled waters by this. So, at times, discretion is the better part of valor. So let's look at that.
I guess the question is, India took a kind of Michelle Obama-esque, when they go low, we go high. That's one way of doing it. So Hasini is saying that, this is the American president and the consequences are very serious. And if you're talking about strategic autonomy, you have to assert it. The government, General Shukla, would argue that we are asserting it day after day after day. We have made it very clear, for example, on the issue of Russian oil, we made a big statement by going for the SCO summit to China. It may have been a tactical move. It may have been for that one photo op that finally got the story picked up in the Western media. But you do not every day counter Trump, which is sort of what you're saying. Let me read out a comment here from another one of our regular viewers before I come to you. Prasad says, India has to be diplomatically non-confrontational, yet strategically very clear and firm in its dealings that matches its large consumer market status in the global economy, which all want access to. General Shukla, go ahead. We need to unmute General Shukla, please.
I apologize to Suhasini, I didn't mean you at all. I was talking of the kind of conversation between Trump and Munir. Please, I was saying that could be better. And even there, perhaps my choice of word would have been better. Now, see, what is the issue with Trump? Trump is definitely street smart. Is he wise? That's my question. And I don't think he's wise. I think there are some of the deeper issues which I have been talking of, what should really concern us. When Mr. Jaishankar points to capacity, I think he's absolutely right. India's most serious deficit is lack of capacity. I'll give you one example. To so many of the serious Americans who speak to you, they tell you that even when we counted on India to, say, balance China in South Asia, we found that India could not match up because China would just, what shall I say, flood the neighbors with all kinds of stuff, EV, solar panels, infra, So India was not able to balance China even in South Asia. So this was a serious capacity issue. We know what happened, the problem with rare earths, with boring machines, how it affects infrastructure along the LAC. And the larger point I want to make is this. It's my strong hunch that Trump is already doing it, Trump and MAGA, which is this pull out from Asia, this retreat to the Western Hemisphere. Because if any of that is true, and I see Elbridge Colby, I've known him for a while, he was one of the biggest proponents of a deeper pivot to Asia, to Indo-Pacific. And now he's writing the doctrine for pulling back to the Western Hemisphere. Now, these are the serious issues because it leaves India alone to find a modus vivendi with China. So, and when you start doing that, I pointed out on your show our many weaknesses, the grimness of our strategic environment, our poor strategic communication. So I've been pointing out those issues where we need to do far better.
I have to take last comments, so let me actually start with Suhasini, then go to Ambassador Sajna and end with General Shukla. Where do you see this going from here, Suhasini? In terms of Pakistan, something we haven't actually discussed that. In the last week, we have seen a sort of fiercer aggression in the words exchanged between both countries. India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh responded to what is reported expansion of Pakistan's infrastructure near the Sir Creek area. The army chief then gave a very fierce statement. Khwaja Asif, Pakistan's defense minister, has now used a sentence with, threatening to bury India under the wreckage of its planes and so on. What is actually going on here? The emboldened energy of Pakistan at this point, partially drawn from its pact with Saudi Arabia, partially drawn from, of course, its long-standing relationship with China, and partially drawn with its sudden significance for Trump. That said, they did backpedal from their support for the Gaza plan, Trump's Gaza plan, and they were not mentioned in Trump's comments when he listed all the countries that had helped make the plan or support the plan.
Well, I mean, as far as what's happening at Sir Creek in terms of the infrastructure, I think that's being dealt with at a tactical level, possibly with the BSF involved there. What's happening at the rhetoric level, I mean, the idea that our army chief should say Pakistan is not going to be part of geography, and the Pakistani defense minister responding to that, I take it that is just extended rhetoric. I think what is obvious, and nobody thinks that Pakistan's relationship with the entire world has improved because in some way Pakistan's prospects have improved. I think it's coming from the idea of twofold. One is there's an obvious pushback to the Indian idea, or the idea put out by the government and particularly by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar at one point, that India would isolate Pakistan. That is not happening because Pakistan is tactically very, very crucial to a lot of countries' different plans. So whether it's Saudi Arabia and its plans for a defense backup, whether it is Turkey and its plans for the OIC ballast that Pakistan presents, whether it's the US and what it sees as rare earth minerals, or Afghanistan or its strategic place vis-a-vis Iran. Each of these countries are dealing with Pakistan because of their specific requirement at that time. But I think it does push back against any idea the government had of showing that Pakistan is somehow isolated. Eventually, in the large scheme of things, Barkha, and this is the subject of a completely different show, I'm sure, India needs to understand we're dealing with, as Ambassador Sajjanhar said, a US that is temperamental, mercurial, will change its mind any day, and basically cannot be trusted. So 25 years of trust in the US now has come into question. We're also dealing with another world player, which is China, which has behaved in an extremely illogical way with India, attacking India, transgressing across our boundaries, the killings of our Javans in Galwan, also a country that we are not about to trust. We're also dealing with a very protectionist world. Where does India go? India has to see the logic of dealing more closely with its own region. And yes, that region includes Pakistan. I know that's not something people want to hear, but that is geography. And the idea that India is going to build itself on the world stage without working with South Asia, without building its markets within South Asia, without building resilient supply chains without South Asia, is frankly not going to go very far in a world that is turning more and more regional.
So I want to bring in Ambassador Sajnar at this point. The neighborhood is such a problematic space for India right now. You also have sort of the connections being rebuilt between Pakistan and Bangladesh, right? If you look at our region, almost every country has its own sort of share of volatility and turmoil. So Hasni seems to argue that the path ahead has to run through your immediate neighborhood because China can't be trusted and America has shown it can't be trusted. And, if you're going to play the great power game, then those are the two great powers right now. How do you see the path ahead? Jaishankar again stressing strategic autonomy. Rhetorically, that's one thing. What does it actually mean?
Yeah, so excellent question. So let me put it, take it at two levels. Number one, as far as strategic autonomy is concerned, that's right. But that also gels in with multi-alignment. That means you have these relationships with a large number of other countries. It's not only China is important, it's a neighbor. You have to have normal, stable, predictable relations. That is what we are working towards, whether it was in Kazan or it was in Tianjin, or it is now, visa facilitation or direct flights, etc., etc. We are taking baby steps towards that. So we are doing that. As far as US is concerned, again, but there's the whole world also outside that, as I mentioned. I think UK is there, EU is there. They're not, our bilateral trade with the European Union is also in the range of $140, $150 billion. It's not a mean amount. So if you are able to get an FTA with them, I think that's going to be very beneficial. And we are looking at, ASEAN and some of the other countries in terms of how we get better bilateral trade relations to our benefit. As far as neighborhood is concerned, I agree. Neighborhood is very important, and I think the government also realizes it, and that is why you would recall, Barkha, it is that right when this government came to power in 2014, and May 2014, all the SAARC member countries and Prime Minister of Mauritius, they were invited to the swearing-in ceremony, to the oath-taking ceremony. So I think the government recognizes that neighborhood is important and it is willing to step up, have non-reciprocal relations, reach out to these countries. Now, surely, I would say, and that can be a subject of another discussion, that India's relations with our neighbors are not as good as they should be, not because India is wanting in making the effort. I'll just give you very quickly two, three examples. You look at Nepal. When Prime Minister Modi went there in September of 2014, it was the first bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister after a period of 17 years. And after that, there have been 4 or 5 visits that have taken place. Of course, one for BIMSTEC, one for SAARC, but 3 or 4 for bilateral level. And I think we have had problem if it is Mr. KP Sharma Oli, he is moving to the other side. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, when Prime Minister went there in March of 2015, it was the first bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister after 32 years. So, we need to take cognizance of that. And after that, Prime Minister has gone there very many times. So it is not because India has not paid attention. India has invested political capital and financial capital, whether it's in Maldives, whether it's Sri Lanka, whether it is Afghanistan also. Now, as far as Bangladesh is concerned, you can't control what is happening domestically. Those are challenges. And you come to a challenge, you will deal with the challenge. And I think that is what the government is saying and what the government is trying to do.
So, General Shukla, as we give you the closing word, you've always spoken about the need to build greater capacity. I think you have your concerns as a military man about China. You have concerns about defense spending, about modernization, about technology. We are actually, if living not in an actively hostile world, in a very precarious world from an Indian perspective. I think we have to acknowledge that, it may have been fueled by Trump, but that is the bottom line. What is the path that you see ahead?
So, as you rightly observed, I have a litany of complaints. I mean, about things which are not being done. But let me just say two things. Why Pakistan still doesn't bother me so much, and China does. So, if Pakistan, with its bankrupt economy, broken politics, is still on this mission of being a regional military power, I mean, West Asia, South Asia, everything. I mean, that's good news as far as I'm concerned, because they are badly out of strategic balance. Why China bothers me is, for all the reasons that I've already stated. In addition, March, they had, I think March or April, they had this grand conference in the Great Hall called Two Sessions. Now, I'm not a Chinese reader, but the English translations I read, Xi admitted that their economy was broken. Honesty. He reviewed this whole path of how to take all this stuff, EV, critical technologies, to the next level. What correction should happen? I don't see these things happening even in India, which is a democracy. Therefore, China worries me more. And one point about India that I wish to say is that, we have weight, we have influence. We should not mistake it for power. Weight and influence have yet to be converted into power. So we must balance our, strategic stride with our economic flight. And therefore, I will go along with Ambassador Sajanar when he says that despite Trump's tantrums, we need USA. We have to be careful. We are not in a position as of yet to, reject the American relationship and all that. And the last point, which I've said many times on your show, that wisdom would lie in speaking softly and carrying a big stick. Sometimes we are guilty of speaking loudly without a sharp enough stick. So we must sharpen the stick.
Absolutely. I think that's very well said. We leave it there with only just a thought about power. I think the world is in an extremely, not just volatile phase, but it has displayed that the only language that actually is understood, sometimes kicking and screaming, is that of power. And I think therefore the point that you make about building capacity and not mistaking weight and influence for power is a very important one, especially when you're confronted with precarious relationship with the world's two great powers, America and China both. That is just the fact, and it is a difficult time. Thank you very much, General Shukla, Suhasini Haidar, and Ambassador Sajanar. Always a pleasure. To our audience, thank you. See you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.